I'm Jessica Shahinian. I'm a spokesperson for Tension Myoneural Syndrome Awareness, and I became the spokesperson for this awareness because I myself suffered from chronic pain. Essentially, you could say I suffered from it since I was 13, but I was a dancer, and that seemed normal in the lifestyle of a dancer. But when I was 26, I became severely, what I thought, injured with crippling symptoms, 20 plus chronic symptoms, that 20 doctors in nearly every field said I'd have to deal with forever. I have 4 levels of herniated discs, 2 cervical, 2 lumbar, completely torn hips, the cartilage is completely gone, torn cartilage in both knees, I've had stress fractures in both feet. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when CT scans showed that I had intense swelling and intestinal bleeding going on in my intestines, which wasn't fun. And all of that is gone now. As soon as I learned about tension myoneural syndrome and read one of Dr. Sarno's books called Healing Back Pain, halfway through the book, all of my 20 plus chronic symptoms started happening all at once while I was lying down completely safe and fine reading this book and realizing what happened 10 seconds ago when I was fine to now when I'm having symptoms of chest pain and heart attacks and full body tremors and spasms and back pain. What happened between then and now? And it was the emotions that I was facing as I was reading about the statistics of surgery and how low they are in terms of their performance, that there's no difference between waiting or getting surgery, or waiting and getting cognitive behavioral therapy. So now I want to bring this out to you guys. If you have any questions, please ask. I am very experienced with having nearly every symptom that is possible with TMS, and I've been through it all, and I'm also working alongside the top doctors and researchers in this field, so ask away. Yeah. So you're shocked that there hasn't been that much progress between 1970s when Dr. Sarno was starting this work and publishing his work, and bringing it to the forefront, and as you saw in the documentary, even showing it in 2012 to the Senate to really show this off. Bernie Sanders was there and everything, and yet still it's not widely accepted, and still at NYU, I've been there recently, there's only Dr. Ira Rashbaum, who is the chief of TMS medicine, but there's not really anyone under him, and there's no one else really diagnosing for this. If anyone is familiar, or if you're not, please visit the tmswiki.org. That is tmswiki.org. It is a great resource for the community of TMS practitioners and patients and everything you need to know about anything to do with TMS. And there's only 140 practitioners in every variety on the planet that is listed. So that is not enough considering the over 100 million people that suffer from chronic pain annually. I also was shocked that there wasn't much progress. I was shocked that the research was out before I was even born, and yet 20 doctors in every field did not connect this. Or if they did, they would say, well, maybe you're stressed. But that didn't help me get better just to hear that when I'm going to the ER for symptoms of a heart attack to say, you're stressed, reduce stress. Okay, I would if I could, that's not helping. So that's why I actually am trying to expand the work. I created a web series that makes it easy to share the information with quick little videos. If you go online, just Google GotPainCure, like got pain, get the cure, GotPainCure. So it makes it shareable, the information that Sarno put out. But unfortunately, if you haven't already heard, Dr. Sarno passed on June 22nd, just before this documentary released, and before his 94th birthday, and so we are doing a lot right now to try to get the research out there, mostly because it helps people, and it makes healthcare more affordable, and you would think that there wouldn't be a pushback against that, and yet there is. I'm actually trying to work with health insurance companies in the future to help them realize the incentive they have to save money, because I myself was able to avoid 2 back surgeries, 2 hip surgeries, and an intestinal resection just by getting better, which I was on the list to get. So that saves insurance companies a lot of money. Yes, another question. That is a great question. Oh yeah, so TMS stands for Tension Myoneural Syndrome, and it is chronic pain or other symptoms that are triggered by stress, trauma, and repressed emotions that can happen anywhere in the body, and they're actually not caused by a physical injury or organ disease, which you do need to get ruled out, but it is not all in your head. and a lot of people will, the term for it is psychosomatic, and that has a bad connotation, but what it means is that your central nervous system, specifically the autonomic nervous system, can cause any part of your body to shut down or become dysfunctional, and it is benign and temporary, and it is curable. The important thing is to have it diagnosed and ruled out. So for me, I did multiple colonoscopies, endoscopies, and MRIs all over the place. But there's a difference between damage and an abnormality. So herniations of the back are actually abnormalities. And when they did statistical findings, they found that even 20-year-olds, about 37% of them have disc degeneration of some kind. That goes up to 37% for when they're 30, up to 96% when they're 80. So when I was a dancer, they always thought, oh, you don't have a herniated disc unless you either got hit by a football player on the field or when you're 80, but I have 4 and I was in my 20s when I first found out about it. So as for hair loss, that is a great question. I'm seeing a lot of people that are coming to me bringing that symptom up. So hair loss can be caused by stress, but everything that can be caused by TMS can also be caused by conditions that are not TMS, which is why it's important to rule it out. So do always check with your doctor and see what they say. But when it continues and it's chronic and they can't link it to anything specific, then that's your sign there. And technically, they can actually see TMS very clearly on a functional MRI, which is a special type of MRI that actually goes many more images than an MRI does. So they actually can pinpoint it there, but they just don't do it because fMRIs are very expensive and it's only just now starting with the research. So technically you can 100% see the difference between acute pain and chronic pain. In fMRI studies, chronic pain actually shows up in the emotional centers of your brain, the frontal cortex, versus the more physical areas that you would see. So they can really pinpoint it. There's a lot of research happening which will make this more accessible. The medical system is pretty complicated and there's a lot of politics involved, but what they need to make something standard medicine is multiple peer-reviewed, randomized controlled trials. Basically, you have to prove that TMS works better than a placebo. Because a placebo works really well, which is why acupuncture works really well. But that has not yet beaten a placebo. But we've already shown there's RCTs that are coming out soon. Dr. Howard Schubiner, which you saw at the end of the video talking about how he had symptoms in med school, he actually already had a successful RCT. It's being published soon. And there's a fundraising campaign on Indiegogo for the mind-body connection that's also doing their 3rd RCT, actually, that's coming out. So we got that.
What's RCT?
So yeah, an RCT, once again, is a randomized controlled trial where you're comparing the type of medicine that you want to show whether or not it works against a placebo. So what they're doing is comparing TMS awareness and therapy treatment against placebo steroid injections, which are completely nothing, no medicine to it, and then a control group where nothing happens. So you have to have those 3 groups. It's all very complicated, but it helps it become standard medicine. Yes?
I was wondering if there were any specific literature or resources about the kind of psychotherapy to deal with this. I'm a clinical psychologist. I see this sort of thing all the time in my practice and in myself. And it's sometimes you were lucky in the sense that you read the book that worked and many people speaking in there. That also happened, but it doesn't always happen. People can have the intellectual knowledge. And I feel like I know what to do, but I was just wondering if there were any specific thing people writing about psychotherapy and where I could find out about that.
Yeah, so a great resource for that. I also link some of my favorite books on my web series, GotPainCure. If you search on YouTube, it puts it right there. Some of my favorite books that the doctors in this published, Dr. David Clark, the president of the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, wrote a great book for those with gastrointestinal issues called They Can't Find Anything Wrong. Frances Summer Anderson and Dr. Eric Sherman. Frances Summer Anderson is actually coming from the next Q&A group. They both wrote a book that is great for those with childhood trauma, great for fellow psychologists and psychiatrists to read up on, called Pathways to Pain Relief. That is a great one, linking case studies they've had of examples of someone with childhood trauma that shows up decades later. And aside from Dr. Sarno's books, Dr. Howard Schubiner, who I mentioned already, wrote Unlearn Your Pain, which specifically uses ISTDP-styled approach to healing TMS, which is intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, and that actually helps relieve the chronic pain. unlike the therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is to help you deal with it forever, like learn to live with it for the rest of your life, this therapy actually helps you get rid of it because it's coming from the mindset that you can get rid of it. But for me, I actually didn't do the emotional expressive exercises, which a lot of people do need to do. The more childhood trauma you've had, usually you need to do more journaling. For me, I just did Dr. Sarno's 12 daily reminders or affirmations to constantly think through that if I'm sitting down in a chair, which would, at the time, always cause me back pain and my legs to go numb and collapse, I would remember, it's not my herniated disc, it's not the chair, I'm physically fine, and I can sit and it should be no symptom. It's psychological. I need to think psychologically, not physically. What am I stressed about? What is going on in my life? Don't worry about the back. Keep pushing through it. It's fine. If I bend, if I move, if I dance, I will be completely fine. It won't cause further damage because there is no damage. So that's what worked for me. And you can find all the resources you need on the tmswiki.org. That is a great resource. I linked to it in my web series as well. It's a really great resource. Yeah. Any other questions?
This is related to placebo effect. Placebo effect is a real thing.
Yep.
And it involves the belief that people were talking about. So,
yeah, I mean, placebo effect really works.
It's not putting it down at all to say there's placebo involved because people have faith that there's no harm being done, and then that really helps them.
Yeah, it's interesting how the placebo effect is tied in even when medicine can be demonstrable or, you can really demonstrate it no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the difference. So there is a placebo effect element when you believe that it'll work, and there's a nocebo effect element, which when you believe it doesn't work. Like if you believe that you will have pain when you sit, you will have pain when you sit. If you believe that this injection won't help you or that the surgery won't help you, chances are your success rate is going to go way down, which I think they referenced in the documentary. The childhood trauma is actually the biggest indicator of how likely you are to recover after a low back surgery. So that says a lot about that it's not herniated disc. However, it's not just the placebo effect that is involved with TMS mindfulness and awareness, because it actually shows up with or without the knowledge of it. You can actually see it on the fMRI. So the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is actually going to inhibit the autonomic nervous system of the amygdala. Therefore, it's going to counteract that fight or flight mechanism. So fear is a really big component in why pain leads to fear leads to pain. But first off, fear leads to pain in the beginning of it. It's a big vicious cycle. So if you have pain and you've been diagnosed with TMS, you don't have to worry about it. Removing that fear will lessen the pain, which will continue to remove the fear, which will continue to remove the pain. So that's really how that process works. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So how far back do you need to look in your emotional repression in order to get better and relieve TMS symptoms? I find it varies per person. For me, I didn't really need to look back that far. I mostly needed to know what was, and more importantly, what was not causing my physical symptoms. The what was not part really helped, because I could push through sitting in a chair, bending in half, knowing that that was not causing my physical symptoms, so there was no danger. And that even if I didn't pinpoint what I was repressing, what I was angry about or grieving about, I would know that it had something to do with an emotion, stress, or past trauma. But most importantly, I did not need to worry about, I have back pain, my legs are collapsing, everything's numb, I'm having heart attack symptoms, I need to seek help. That would go away really quickly, and I can get my symptoms to go away in seconds, which is lucky, because if you do not get heart attack symptoms to go away in seconds, do seek medical attention. Do not ever think that everything is TMS. Do get properly checked. I wore a heart monitor for a month, so I'm pretty well aware it's not heart issues. Also, being an actor, I find that it's kind of the opposite of how actors learn to trigger emotions to cause all these physical expressions of emotions. It's the opposite of that. Finding those triggers, learning them for yourself, and turning them off. And most importantly, it's not being afraid of emotions. So just let them come, observe them without judgment, and just know that they're there. And that will really help too. So for some, you really need to pinpoint what specifically was bothering me. For me, I just need to know that it's not my herniated disc. It's not because I'm sitting or walking. And you can find that on your own. That's why there's different processes for it. I also find it's like learning a language, because talking to your unconscious is, you have to really use it just like you're learning a new language. You can't just learn a little bit of it, do it for like a week, and then think that I'm going to remember French 10 years after never practicing it because I forgot it all. you have to really practice it and just kind of keep it going and going. Because I do get symptoms that pop up. Dr. Sarno referred to it as the symptom imperative. It'll pop up. Something stressful happens, it'll pop up. But you just keep getting it to go away, and it gets easier and easier. Because the more you learn not to fear those symptoms, the more you learn to get rid of them, the more likely that that new behavior will stick. It's mostly just not reinforcing the bad behavior of catastrophizing is a big part of it. When you catastrophize, will this last forever? What does this mean? Then it just continues. But when you don't, you say, it'll go away. It's temporary. No big deal. It goes away. Anything else?
Since we have time, I'll make a comment. As far as, since I was cured, it was a revelation, just like Larry David, and I've tried to mention it to anyone who I obviously see having TMS. And out of, 10, 15 people I've ever mentioned it to, the only one who's actually taken the advice was my wife. And just one story about Dr. Sarno, she started to experience a bit of neck TMS. So they said, hey, it's getting bad. The book isn't really doing the job. Let's try to get an appointment. At that time, Dr. Sarno wouldn't take out-of-state patients, but he did spend, about a half hour with her on the phone, and he cured her on the phone.
He didn't even know.
No charge, no
I've
anything.
never seen him before.
So,
He's a wonderful man.
testimony.
Yeah, let's comment.
I'm a psychotherapist, and I truly, truly believe in the role of the unconscious. And I think most people that I see really want a quick cure. Like the doctor
Right.
said, pill, CBT, DBT, ABT, ABC, I don't care.
Yeah.
I really feel the role of the unconscious is an extremely powerful identification.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have to clear the house for the next group, but please go to alltheragedoc.com for any info. Promote this on IMDb. If you love the documentary, please leave a good review. Tell your friends. And I'll be out in the lobby for a while. If anyone has any additional questions or comments, I'll pass it on to the directors of the film. Thank you.